In June 2023, the company behind some of the most familiar bread brands in Canada pleaded guilty to 4 counts of criminal price fixing. The Ontario Superior Court imposed a $50 million fine, the highest price-fixing fine ever imposed by a Canadian court. 1 year later, Loblaw and George Weston Limited agreed to pay a combined $500 million to settle the resulting class action, the largest antitrust settlement in Canadian history. A senior executive had arranged with a competitor to inflate the wholesale price of bagged and sliced bread. At least 1.50 was added to the price of every loaf. The bread you bought every week for years cost more than it should have because the companies that made it agreed, in private, to charge you more, and the price wasn't the only thing wrong with it. In December 2025, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency published results from testing over 1,500 grain products sampled from 11 major cities across Canada. 85% tested positive for glyphosate, the active chemical in Roundup. Not imported products from unknown sources, Canadian grain products from Canadian grocery store shelves. 2 corporations control nearly every major bread brand in the country. Both are directly connected to the price-fixing scandal. We're breaking down 10 Canadian bread brands from concerning to genuinely alarming, and finishing with the 6 that are actually worth buying. Number 10. Dempster's, Canada's best-selling bread brand, a national staple since 1911. The loaf that sits in more Canadian kitchens than any other, Dempster's was purchased by Canada Bread in 1968, and for decades it was considered as Canadian as the country itself. In May 2014, Grupo Bimbo of Mexico, the largest baking company on earth, acquired Canada Bread for $1.83 billion. Dempster's is now wholly owned by a Mexican multinational with $22 billion in annual revenue and operations in 34 countries. Bimbo Canada, as the company is now called, operates 16 bakeries and distributes over 1,000 products across 18 brands that most Canadians still think of as independent companies. During the price-fixing conspiracy, Dempster's was one of the bagged and sliced bread products being sold at artificially inflated prices. Canada Bread admitted that a senior executive arranged price increases with Weston Foods for sandwich bread, hot dog buns, and rolls. Those increases happened in 2007 and again in 2011. The company that owns Dempster's pleaded guilty and was fined $50 million for it. Read the ingredient list on a bag of Dempster's white bread: calcium propionate, sodium stearoyl lactylate, monoglycerides. The same industrial additive profile found on every mass-market bread brand in the United States. And the CFIA found glyphosate in 85% of Canadian grain products. Dempster's uses Canadian wheat. Pre-harvest desiccation, spraying Roundup directly onto standing wheat to accelerate drying before harvest, is standard practice across Canadian agriculture. Squeeze the bag next time you pick one up. If it compresses completely and bounces back like foam, that's not bread behavior. That's a formulation. Canada's best-selling bread, owned by the world's largest baking company, convicted of criminal price fixing, and baked with grain from a supply chain that tests 85% positive for glyphosate. The next brand was owned by the other company at the center of the scandal. And the story of how it changed hands tells you everything about what happened behind closed doors. Number 9. Wonder Bread. In Canada, Wonder Bread is now owned by FGF Brands, a Canadian private company that acquired the Weston Foods fresh and frozen bakery business from George Weston Limited for $1.50 billion in December 2021. That transaction included Wonder, Country Harvest, D'Italiano, Ace Bakery, Casa Mendoza, Dave's Killer Bread's Canadian operation, and Godua. All of them previously belonged to George Weston Limited. And George Weston Limited is the parent company of Loblaw, the grocery chain that self-reported the bread price-fixing scheme to the Competition Bureau and received immunity from prosecution in exchange for cooperating. These were the brands being produced and sold during the conspiracy. The bread changed hands. The supply chain that produced price-fixed bread didn't change at all. Read the ingredient list on Canadian Wonder Bread. Enriched bleached wheat flour, calcium sulfate, sodium stearoyl lactylate, monoglycerides, stripped of nutrients, bleached, then fortified with synthetic vitamins to replace what the processing removed. The brands changed owners for $1.2 billion. The formulation and the sourcing infrastructure that comes with it transferred as part of the deal. Number 8. Great Value Bread. Walmart Canada's house brand. The cheapest bread on Canadian shelves, and the price alone should raise questions about what's inside. Walmart Canada is named in the ongoing bread price-fixing class action alongside Metro, Sobeys, and Giant Tiger. The Loblaw and George Weston settlement is resolved. The investigation into these other retailers continues. Beyond the price-fixing allegations, Great Value bread is sold in clear plastic packaging with no harvest date, no grain origin transparency, and no third-party quality testing published for consumers to review. The CFIA's finding applies uniformly. 85% of Canadian grain products tested positive for glyphosate. Great Value bread is made from Canadian wheat. The same desiccation practices, the same residue levels. Check the ingredient list on the bag. Count the items. Real bread is flour, water, salt, yeast, and perhaps a small amount of oil. 5 ingredients. Everything beyond that was added to extend the shelf, simulate freshness, or reduce sourcing cost. Named in the price-fixing class action, made with grain that tests 85% positive for a known herbicide, and still the cheapest loaf on the shelf. Number 7. POM Bread, Quebec's dominant bread brand. POM has been in Quebec kitchens for generations. Quebecers think of it as their bread, a local brand with local roots. POM was acquired through Multi-Marks in 2001 by Canada Bread. Canada Bread is now Bimbo Canada. POM is owned by Grupo Bimbo, the same Mexican multinational, the same $22 billion operation, the same company that pleaded guilty to criminal price fixing. 2 of the country's most popular bread brands, Dempster's in Ontario and POM in Quebec, sit on opposite ends of the grocery aisle and look like competitors. They are produced by the same convicted parent company, through the same 16 bakeries, under the same corporate umbrella. Quebec's bread, Mexico's company, and the same criminal conviction that applies to every loaf Bimbo Canada produced during the conspiracy. If this investigation is already changing how you look at the bread aisle, you're not even halfway through. The next 6 entries are where the pattern between the 2 companies that control Canadian bread becomes impossible to ignore. Number 6. Country Harvest. Marketed as the healthier whole grain alternative. The word harvest in the name suggests something natural, something closer to the farm. Country Harvest is owned by FGF Brands, acquired as part of the Weston Foods deal in 2021. Previously owned by the same George Weston Ltd. That admitted to participating in the price-fixing arrangement and received immunity for cooperating. The ingredient list includes soy lecithin, calcium propionate, and other additives that do not appear in traditional bread. The Harvest branding suggests simplicity. The label tells a different story. FGF's second appearance on this list. Same parent company as Wonder Bread. Same acquisition, same supply chain provenance. Same corporate lineage tracing directly back to the price-fixing scandal. Number 5. Villaggio. Italian-style bread marketed as artisan quality. Premium packaging, premium pricing, a brand that suggests craft and tradition. Villaggio is owned by Bimbo Canada, Grupo Bimbo, the same parent as Dempster's at number 10 and POM at number 7. The artisan positioning commands a higher price per loaf, but the production is industrial scale across Bimbo's 16 bakeries nationwide. The same facilities that produce Dempster's white bread produce Villaggio. The same company that was convicted of price fixing sets the wholesale price. Italian name, Mexican ownership, Canadian criminal conviction, and a premium price tag for bread baked in the same industrial facilities as the budget brand 3 spots below it. Number 4. Di Italiano. Another Italian-positioned bread brand, competing directly with Villaggio on the same shelf in the same grocery store. Di Italiano is owned by FGF Brands, acquired from George Weston Ltd. in the same $1.2 billion transaction as Wonder Bread and Country Harvest. 2 Italian bread brands on the same shelf. one owned by a Mexican conglomerate convicted of price fixing, the other owned by a company that bought its entire brand portfolio from the family that confessed to fixing bread prices. By now, the pattern is visible. Dempster's, POM, and Villaggio belong to Bimbo. Wonder, Country Harvest, and D'Italiano belong to FGF. 6 brands that look like independent competitors in the bread aisle, 2 corporations behind all of them, both directly connected to the largest bread price-fixing conspiracy in Canadian history. The bread aisle in your grocery store is an illusion of choice managed by 2 companies, one convicted and one built on the assets of the company that cooperated to avoid conviction. Number 3. Stone Mill Bakehouse. This is the betrayal entry. Stone Mill started as a genuine Toronto artisan bakery. Small batch, naturally fermented, slow-crafted bread made the way bread has been made for centuries. The kind of bakery people discover and feel good about supporting. The kind of bread you switch to when you decide to stop buying Dempster's and start buying better. In 2016, Bimbo Canada acquired Stone Mill Bakehouse. It is now part of the same corporate operation as Dempster's, POM, and Villaggio. The same company convicted of criminal price fixing. The name and the packaging still suggest artisan independence. The corporate filing says Grupo Bimbo, world's largest baking company, $22 billion in annual revenue, 34 countries, started as a real bakery, acquired by the world's largest baking company. The artisan story is still on the bag. The corporate reality moved in behind it years ago. We're getting close to the brands that will genuinely surprise you. Number 2 in particular. The name that health-conscious Canadians reach for when they decide they've solved the bread problem. Stay with us. Number 2. Dave's Killer Bread. Bold graphic packaging, dense seedy loaves, a founder's redemption story printed on every bag. USDA organic certified, non-GMO project verified. The brand people trust because the marketing says everything they want to hear. In Canada, Dave's Killer Bread is manufactured under the FGF brand's umbrella, part of the Weston Foods portfolio acquired in 2021. The same corporate lineage as Wonder Bread and Country Harvest, the same brands that were being sold during the price-fixing years under George Weston's ownership. In the United States, independent laboratory testing by the Alliance for Natural Health found 136 parts per billion of glyphosate in Dave's Killer Bread whole wheat. Florida's Department of Health found 10 to 12 parts per billion in other varieties. Those numbers are lower than conventional brands, and that's the precise issue. Lower is not the same as zero. A brand that has built its entire identity on being the gold standard of organic bread and charges a premium to match has made a specific promise, not almost clean, clean. The lab results describe what's inside the bag. The founder's story on the outside sells it. The brand health-conscious Canadians reach for with confidence belongs to the same company that acquired the price-fixed bread portfolio. And the lab found glyphosate in the product that organic certification is supposed to guarantee is free of it. And that brings us to number 1. The finding that made us question whether any loaf of bread baked with Canadian wheat can guarantee what the label promises. Number 1. The glyphosate desiccation system. This isn't about one brand. It's about the agricultural practice that contaminates them all. In Canada, glyphosate is sprayed directly onto standing wheat and grain crops before harvest to accelerate drying. This practice is called pre-harvest desiccation. It's legal, it's common, and it's the reason glyphosate ends up in bread. When Roundup is applied days before harvest, the chemical concentrates in the outer hull of the wheat kernel. That hull becomes the flour. The flour becomes the bread. Whole wheat bread retains more of the hull, which is why products marketed as the healthier choice can carry higher glyphosate residues than white bread made from flour that stripped the outer layer away. In December 2025, the CFIA published results showing that 85% of Canadian grain products tested positive for glyphosate. Not a marginal finding, not a handful of contaminated batches, 85% of 1,584 samples from 11 cities across the country. Canada's maximum residue limit for glyphosate on wheat is 5 parts per million. The European Union has been restricting pre-harvest glyphosate application for years. Richardson International, Canada's largest grain handler, stopped buying oats treated with pre-harvest glyphosate back in 2015, an industry-level acknowledgement that the practice was producing contamination that customers didn't want. Meanwhile, Bayer, which acquired Monsanto, has paid approximately $11 billion globally to settle nearly 100,000 lawsuits filed by people who developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma after glyphosate exposure. In February 2026, Bayer proposed an additional $7.27 billion settlement for current and future claims. The bread was price-fixed and contaminated. Canadians paid more for a product that carried a known herbicide in 85% of samples tested. The company that produced the bread was convicted of price fixing. The company that cooperated to avoid prosecution sold its brands for $1.2 billion. And the agency that published the glyphosate results didn't name a single brand. They fixed the price. They contaminated the grain. And the system that was supposed to protect you published a report without telling you which products to avoid. Now that you know what to avoid, here are the 6 that actually held up. These aren't consolation picks. These are producers that test their products, publish the results, and source their grain differently from the ground up. Clean pick number 6. Cobb's Bread, a Canadian franchise bakery chain that bakes fresh daily in-store. Simple ingredient lists, no preservatives on most products. Bread baked and sold the same day, not engineered to survive weeks of shelf life in plastic packaging. The limitation is honest. Cobb's is a franchise model, which means ingredient consistency can vary by location. They are not certified glyphosate-free, and they don't publish third-party contaminant testing. But bread that's baked and sold the same day, with a short ingredient list, is structurally different from anything on the avoid list. Clean pick number 5. Food for Life Ezekiel 4:9. Available across Canada at Loblaws, Whole Foods, and natural grocery stores. There is no flour in Ezekiel bread. Food for Life sprouts 6 organic whole grains and legumes, then bakes them slowly at controlled temperatures to preserve nutritional density. This isn't a reformulated industrial loaf with better marketing. It's a fundamentally different process. Food for Life carries the bio-checked non-glyphosate certified seal, meaning glyphosate residues in the finished product are verified below laboratory detection limits. Family-owned and baking in Corona, California since 1964. The limitation is that it's American-made, not Canadian, and the dense, chewy texture is a significant adjustment from conventional sliced bread. Look for it in the freezer section. Without preservatives, this loaf molds at room temperature. That's not a flaw. That's proof you're holding actual food. Clean pick number 4. Carbonaut, a Canadian brand under the Silver Hills family of companies. Low-carb, plant-based, non-GMO project verified, and certified glyphosate-free through BioChecked. The limitation is that Carbonaut is a specialty product designed for low-carb diets, not a traditional bread substitute for every household. But the certifications are real, and the testing is verified. Clean pick number 3. Little Northern Bakehouse, another brand under the Silver Hills umbrella. Gluten-free, non-GMO project verified, certified glyphosate-free. For anyone with celiac disease or gluten sensitivity who has been buying store-brand gluten-free bread without knowing whether the grain was tested for contaminants, Little Northern Bakehouse offers verified transparency. The limitation is the gluten-free niche. If you don't need gluten-free bread, this pick isn't for you. Clean pick number 2. 1 Degree Organic Foods, a sister brand of Silver Hills, same family ownership. 1 Degree does something almost no other bread brand in Canada bothers to do. They publish the farm source for every single ingredient, scan the QR code on the bag, and trace the wheat back to the specific field where it was grown. Not the country, not the region, the farm. Every product carries the glyphosate residue-free certification from the Detox Project, verified through accredited third-party laboratory testing. Organic and non-GMO certified. The ingredient list is short, recognizable, and completely free of the industrial additives found on the avoid list. The limitation is distribution and price. 1 degree is available at natural grocery stores and online, not at every Loblaws or Walmart. The inconvenience is real. It's also what happens when a brand hasn't handed its supply chain over to a $22 billion conglomerate. Clean pick number 1. Silver Hills Sprouted Bakery. Family-owned in Abbotsford, British Columbia since 1989. Every product carries the bio-checked non-glyphosate certified seal, non-GMO project verified, certified vegan, Whole Grains Council certified. Sprouted whole grains, plant-based, simple ingredient lists. Available at Loblaws, Sobeys, Metro, Whole Foods, IGA, and Longo's across Canada, making it the most widely distributed clean brand on this entire list. Silver Hills sprouts its grains in clean, cold Canadian water at its Abbotsford bakery. Sprouting activates enzymes in the grain that increase nutrient bioavailability and make the bread easier to digest. Every ingredient is guaranteed non-GMO, and every batch is voluntarily tested for glyphosate when no regulation requires it and no law demands it. They do it because testing the product and publishing the results is the only way to prove what you're selling. Silver Hills also owns 1 Degree Organic Foods, Carbonate, and Little Northern Bakehouse, which means 4 of the 6 clean picks on this list come from the same family-owned company in British Columbia. 1 company, 1 family, 4 brands, all certified glyphosate-free. Compare that to the avoid list. 2 corporations, 10 brands, both connected to price fixing, none voluntarily tested for glyphosate. The limitation is the price, which is higher than Dempster's or Wonder. The sprouted texture is different from conventional sliced bread, and that takes some adjustment. But what you're paying for is verified transparency from a company that chose to test when no one required it. Before you close this, here's the one rule worth keeping. Look for the bio-checked non-glyphosate certified seal. If the bread doesn't carry it, the grain inside was never tested for the herbicide that showed up in 85% of Canadian grain products. 1 seal. That's the difference between a promise about the process and proof about the product. You don't need to memorize brand names or recall settlement figures. In the store, check the bag for 1 seal. If it's there, the product was tested. If it isn't, it wasn't. If someone in your life buys the same loaf of bread every week without reading the label, sending them this video is probably the most useful thing you can do with it. They paid more than they should have for years. They deserve to know what they were paying for. If this changed how you think about what's in your bread, wait until you see what we found when we investigated Canada's most popular dairy brands. That video is on screen now.